Bodega, part uno.
Oh. I'm hoping that this is going to be like Gentleman Broncos.
You'll see. All right.
Okay.
Can we just interrupt anytime?
Of course,
okay?
no, feel free.
Okay.
As bars go, the shit Rivet Tavern took sleazy and redefined the word. A trio of Spurloopian strippers outnumbered the lone customer, but ground the pole on stage with real menace regardless.
Hang on a second. Hang on.
Are you masturbating?
No.
Okay, good.
I was clapping.
I'm not quite there yet. I'm getting close, though.
Behind the chrome-top bar, hunched and moodier than a mork beast, Jargel Floop gazed dully at the tiny vid screen embedded in his left forearm. An empty glass slid down the bar, and with honed reflexes unique to a veteran bartender, Floop caught it, filled it, and returned it with gusto without glancing up. It was the 5th pint of ale the human in the corner had swigged, but it was 5 times the business Floop had the previous night, so he wasn't complaining. After a spell, the melancholy was broken when the front doors creaked open. Floop saw 4 figures in desert cloaks, dust masks fastened across their faces, scanning the room from the doorway. Their eyes settled on the human ale swigger at the far end of the bar. They broke formation. 2 sat at tables either side of the door. 1 sat a ways behind the ale swigger, and the 4th approached the bar with all the cockiness of a Krell sleuster. Barkeep, 1 beverage.
I love the random alien names.
It's set in space, right?
It's just like George Lucas 2.0.
Barkeep, 1 beverage. Lady's choice, said the burly interloper, nodding towards one of the Spurloopians who was taking a break from swinging her big old titties.
Oh, shit! Out of nowhere! Titties! Oh my god! Fuck me.
Give him 2 fingers of fuck monster, Floop, she slurred.
Oh shit! I'm not ready. I was not prepared.
Floop grinned and poured the black liquor into the traditional phallic drinking vessel and gently pushed it towards the man. Leaning in close, the stranger peeled back his face mask, revealing row after row of razor-sharp, off-world combat teeth.
Oh, yes.
He had no way of knowing Floop was odontophobic, so it really was just one of those weird coincidences typical of a space saloon. Put the chompers away, mister. Can't you see my friend here is odontophobic? Said the ale swigger from the corner. Floop looked stunned. How could this guy have known about his odontophobia? Unless... Bodega, said the tooth guy. Said the tooth guy, grimacing. It is you, Bodega, said Floop, turning. He'd not recognized his old compadre and cursed himself for it. Bodega always had money, and he could have charged 5 skrells for the ales instead of 3. Then it dawned on Floop. If Bodega was here, and these 4 guys were here, it could only mean one thing. There was about to be one flarv of a good fight.
Oh, man.
You're coming with us, Bodega, like it or not, said Chompers, smiling to show off his fancy gnashes. Floop blinked hard. When he opened his eyes less than a second later, the 4 interlopers lay dead, and Bodega sat finishing the last of his ale. His famous lasgun lay smoking atop the chrome bar. Great moons of Shabboth! You ain't lost your touch, boy! Exclaimed Floop. And you're still slower than a glorb-worm with the ales, said Bodega, grinning. He played the fight back in his mind. He'd seen the 4 fellows follow him, of course, and had calibrated his lasgun to instantly pierce their Shrovian armor. Just as Chompers had turned to grin at Bodega, he'd taken a shot, refracting the lasgun beam off those shiny dentures to perfectly strike all 3 Goombas right in the heart, killing them instantly. Then, to finish off the leader, he'd simply angled the lasgun beam up off the 3rd incisor in row 5, lower, and turned the leader's brain into Vomanian swamp noodle soup.
Man.
Bodega, said Floop, grinning. Yep, said Bodega, also grinning, but laconically. Bodega, said Floop, still grinning and nodding. Uh-huh, said Bodega. Bodega, said Floop. Still grinning. Okay, this was getting weird, so Bodega paid and left. The end.
Magnificent.
Oh, my lord.
Magnificent, P-Flex. That was...
that was amazing.
Oh, my God.
That was good.
Thank you so much.
Honestly,
Did you...
I could listen to that for hours. Although
I gotta
you're
readjust
gonna
myself.
the amount of aliens that you created, that universe, is so fleshed out already.
Yeah, you know,
Man,
you can feel it.
Chris Metzen left Blizzard, Flax, and there's an opening for his
Get in
job.
there.
I feel like you could get in there, man. You could be like,
The next
their
Chris
next big
Metzen,
thing.
but with
like,
bad
yeah.
fanfic sci-fi about Bodega.
Oh my.
Gentlemen,
Yeah,
it's time.
it is.
Bodega.
All right,
Okay.
let me get comfortable. Hang on
Okay.
a second.
We've exhausted all other.
Okay, I got to put my feet up, and I have to recline a bit on my chair and close my eyes
Okay.
as well.
Bodega. Part dos.
Oh,
A grey canopy of fog gave way to the brilliant Skirlian dawn. 4 suns rising as one, reminding Bodega of the time he almost got run over by a recreational hover vehicle on Platos 4. He slipped his sunglasses into position over his
you're
eyes
like Metzen 2.0. I'm serious. It's crazy.
and squinted down the sights of his las gun back towards his Gretham stealth insertion shuttle. Nobody mooching about nearby, so he felt secure enough in his position. With the sun at his back, he'd learnt this trick in sniper school where he'd finished top of his class and all the other classes in the history of that sniper school and all other sniper schools. He settled into the loose soil of his hilltop vantage point and checked the lasgun pivot bipod once more. The action was as smooth as a slim hound's udder. With the pivot bipod deployed, he'd be able to wreak a terrible revenge on the bastard smugglers down in the valley. There they were now, drinking cups of synth tea and smoking their star vapes. Vaping had been outlawed by the evil Federation director, Krem Slumdump, but those cabrones obviously felt the law didn't extend to them. Bodega laughed to himself. Hell, he loved a good vape too. Bodega wanted to vape really, really badly, but it might give away his position, since he was using an advanced mega vape capable of blanketing a small moon in delicious vape smoke. Enough about vaping, thought Bodega.
Hang on a second.
I love the vaping tangent. Oh,
It's got a little bit of sort of Mary Sue character going. Covers of
No,
Mary
look,
Sue.
lots of people vape, Lewis, and as it happens, Bodega happens to use a mega vape capable of blanketing a small moon delicious vape smoke.
I'm delighted to hear
that
it.
sounds very antisocial, though. I mean, what if the whole moon doesn't want to vape? You know,
Enough
a couple
about
people will.
vaping, thought Bodega. The smugglers were gathered around a collection of small remote-controlled vehicles. Through the vision scope attachment of his lasgun, Bodega could practically smell the scum from here. Whatever they planned to do with those RC vehicles, it was going to be related somehow to their smuggling activities, and it was surely going to be a thing a bastard would do. He'd done research on these bastards before he'd taken the mission. Their list of crimes was so long he'd had to take a couple of extra days off just to read through it and get really, really angry. Bodega liked getting really, really angry. It focused his mind, made him sharp. So sharp he'd come up with the idea for the pivot bipod while he was taking a crap. Bodega's famous lasgun, known throughout the galaxy as the best of the best of the best in terms of lasguns and one of a kind, was capable of a sustained beam which in turn was capable of penetrating the hull of any ship he'd ever shot it at, which was a lot of ships. By definition, a human being in their stupid remote control vehicles was going to be no match at all. He grinned, he being Bodega, and checked the pivot bipod action once more, smoother than a hit from his mega vape. No vaping, thought Bodega firmly.
Man.
Down in the valley, the bastard scum smugglers were laughing and joking and starting to fart around with their RC vehicles. There were 10 of them, their hover vehicles parked up in a semicircle. They sure didn't dress like smugglers, the clever bastards. Most of them had glasses on, which was weird, because anybody with 100 skrells could get eye surgery or an implant or something. Maybe it was part of their disguise. Maybe they weren't very good at smuggling and were a bit hard up when it came to cash. Bodega gave it some thought. He couldn't come up with anything. Ah well, 5 minutes till their personal doomsday anyway. What was he, an optician? Bodega checked the action once more on the pivot bipod and instantly thought about vaping. Flav it, he thought, and pulled out his mega vape. He took one huge tug and exhaled, regretting it instantly. The smugglers all looked up towards the 50-meter cubed cloud of vape billowing off the hilltop. One of them fired up an RC drone and buzzed it straight at Bodega. As it neared him, he tensed every muscle in his body, letting out a small fart as he did so, not out of fear, but as a precaution. A fart in combat is no joke, it can really put you off. But the drone didn't open fire. It hovered nearby, and a small, reedy voice emitted from a speaker on the front. Hello, are you the park ranger? We have a permit to fly our drones as long as it's not a Sunday. Furthermore, flav this! His position revealed and his cover blown, Bodega started putting some serious heat downrange. Target 1 was the Pendejo controlling this thing. The famous lasgun of Bodega did its dreadful business and superheated every molecule of water in that dude's body as he exploded into a trillion fiery fragments. Now it's time for the pivot bipod to do its work. No need to take his finger off the trigger. Bodega simply played the lasgun around the smuggler's meeting point like an old man watering some plants. A drop of water for the Grubels, a dash for the Clearforths, a good soaking for the needy Jup tree. Although in Bodega's case, this translated into 3 more smugglers shrieking in agony as they were sliced into bits by the lasgun.
Oh, man.
Holy shit.
He took a quick squiz down the sights and noticed that many of the smugglers were crawling around and shrieking. Some had curled up into balls and were crying, and some were more desperately trying to run for cover. Zap! All of them paid the ultimate price for smuggling, which was death by Bodega. Job done. He packed up and headed back towards the Gretham. As he got closer, he noticed a group of men off to the south, close enough to hear their conversation. They wore black stealth suits and each carried a large-bore Omni rifle. Hunting season started early this year. Bodega gave a cheery wave and a thumbs up. The men looked bemused for a moment before waving back. Bodega climbed into the Gretham and blammed into orbit. On to his next mission. The end.
Wait, what were they smuggling, though?
Oh, Tips, you didn't get it. They were just flying their drones in the forest.
That was it?
Yes, he killed the wrong people, and then he bumped into the smugglers on the way home.
Oh,
I thought it was obvious. Should I make it more obvious?
It was very obvious.
No, you know what?
P-Flex.
It was pretty obvious. But I stopped paying attention because I was thinking really hard about what they were smuggling. Sorry.
You were trying to decipher
I was
the
like
puzzle.
thinking it because so the whole time I'm visualizing, right? I'm trying to think about what these guys are smuggling. I realized now that they weren't smuggling, and then he passed them. But the whole time I can't get out of my mind how much this reminds me of Gentleman Broncos. Like the sci-fi part of Gentleman Broncos.
Yeah.
Also,
The
it
yeast
reminds me
farms.
a lot of Better Call Saul. When Mike is out in the desert and
I
he's
haven't
like,
watched it.
"Oh, sorry." That's not
Sorry.
a spoiler anyway.
No,
Mike goes
It's
into
not a
the
spoiler,
desert.
no.
Mike is in
at
a
one
desert.
point.
That's not a surprise.
And he's got a sniper rifle and stuff as well. And it really reminded me of that part of Better Call Saul too. Man, Bodega's really good.
Honestly, P-Flex, that was magnificent.
Tress, are you ready?
Oh, yes.
Get ready.
Yeah.
Get comfortable.
Hang
Okay.
on, hold on.
Yep,
Let me
yep,
just move the
yep.
mic down a bit. I'm going to recline a little.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, this time I'm not going to try to think about other shows while you do. I'm going to actually listen and pay attention. Okay, go.
This is reasonably long compared to previous. It's 2 pages.
Oh, man. Okay, great.
Holy shit.
Man, you're getting into this.
I am.
Lewis has got some stiff
Let me just sit
competition.
comfortably.
All right, you ready?
I'm stiff right now, though. Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Bodega, part Tress, or Trey. I don't know how you say it.
Tres.
Bodega peered once more through the quadnoculars. 5 hours he'd been watching the Pulsar sex pit, and the only thing suspicious was that he couldn't find anything wrong. This wasn't right. The pit was a legendary hangout for every lad, slinger, and roid runner in the galaxy. Most of what could loosely be termed his compadres used this very spot to reminisce, catch up, and do business. This time it was different. It was Herc Burke's Burke Day, a very special day for the Burkean people when they celebrated the day they were born. Bodega wondered why, in his experience, humans never celebrated this occasion, but he didn't give a flying crump for it himself. Flarvit, he muttered, firing up the tear cycle and zipping down to the pit. He couldn't pass up the chance to see everybody, even if it did feel suspiciously innocent. Too innocent. Like way too innocent. 100% chance shit was going down here for that very reason. Guaranteed. 100%. Barking up, he ran a quick mental sit rep. Lasgun, cocked and loaded, naturally. Jetpack, ready to rock. Scram boots, pumped to the max. Grabby, spring wound tighter than a Spaloopian's love pouch.
Grabby! Hang on a second. Just read that sentence again. Go through this adventure again. One of the comments I did read, P-Flex, was that you need to take it a little more slowly so you can digest. Because it's complicated. When you're reading like a sci-fi...
Do you know what? It's so hard to pay attention to the gobbledygook and the actual story.
Okay. It's not gobbledygook. It's lore. It's lore. Okay. Lasgun, cocked and ready, naturally. Jetpack, ready to rock. Scram boots, pumped to the max. Grabby, spring wound tighter than a Spaloopian's love pouch.
Love it.
Shrovian knuckle duster, eager to do business with some chump's speak-hole. There were more tricks up his sleeve, but Bodega was reluctant to even think about them till the time came, in case some sneaky empath was trying to get the drop on him. He took a deep breath and banged on the Quintanium door. "Farv off," said a voice from the other side. "Bodega," said Bodega. A moment passed, then the door sprang open.
Bodega,
Said Bodega.
It sounds like the guy in Star Wars, the guy that works at Jabba's palace.
Yes.
Bodega.
No one, no anchor. Yeah. And a gigantic Vikarg was in the frame, grinning like a woodle hound. "Sweet groggle, Bodega," he boomed. "Come on in, Pod. Not seen you for a whiles. Heh, been busy. Where's the birthday Burke? Down in the pit. And I mean, in the pit," said the Vikarg, grinning even more. If his grin extended any further, he was in danger of losing an ear. Bodega headed down the dank corridor into the lobby, then descended a ramp towards the deafening sound of the pulsar sex pit in full flow. Music with so much bass it was causing the planet's orbit to decay. Booze so strong the toilets had to be reinforced with giga shields. And women so betitted Bodega had to wear a quad betitted.
Jesus! Fuck! Fuck me!
Bodega had to wear a
Betitted.
quantanium jockstrap to prevent any inconvenience.
Oh my God.
No man wants to fight with a bone on. Or at least not one that ain't squared away combat style.
It's a bone on an alien race.
Boner. He headed straight for the bar and ordered a pint of Mutant Ale. No sooner had he started talking than, "Bodega!" screamed the man over the music, which the DJ promptly stopped. Silence in the pit. All eyes on Bodega. Pushing through the crowd, a huge Burkian approached. "Bodega. Been a while. Not seen you since maybe 2 weeks ago. Been working. Came back to wish you a happy birthday, Herc Burke." Well, Bodega, back in the pit," said Herc Burke, grinning. People sure were smiling a lot, thought Bodega. Too much. Too much smiling. Ain't no call for all this grinning and smiling. It ain't usual. We were hoping you'd come back. Me, Squiddles, Rhombus, Treg, and, you remember this guy, right? A huge man in a yellow jumpsuit stepped forward. Black skull mask and billowing red cape. Bodega couldn't see his face behind the mask, but he knew he'd be smiling like the rest of these humfunkers. Flav. It was a setup. The man in yellow. It was none other than Tan Blatchman, Bodega's arch nemesis.
Oh my God. Not Tan
Shit was
Blatchman.
about to get extremely
Tan
real
Blatchman.
in this place, and many people were about to be separated from the body parts they held most dear. Bodega intended to get out of this in one piece, and if that meant the end of the Pulsar sex pit and everybody in it, or even within sight of it, so be it. Bodega knew 3 things had to happen with the next second, or he'd be toast. First, he had to distract every single person in here who was currently pointing a gun at him. The pit was full, so that was maybe 200 people. No problem. He stamped down on the button in the heel of his right boot, and waves of patented Happy Thoughts brain musher poured out of the toe and blasted everybody within 50 meters. Half of them would end up on the floor drooling. The other half would become deeply acquainted with the inside of their own eyelids and spend the next year singing a song about a little flea named Peter. Second, he needed to nail the people unaffected by the brain musher, which was anyone with half an idea about Bodega and what he was capable of, since they would have taken a dose of brain shield. That meant the 5 morons who'd set this whole thing up. Las gun holstered and no time to draw it, he needed subplans to point to named B, C, and D. Plan B was to employ the Grabby Grabber and Herkberg's nuts, which he did to good effect. The Grabby Grabby shot out of Bodega's left sleeve and clamped on like a grog limpet, sending Herkberg to his knees, eyes wide and mouth small. Plan C, Squittles, Rhombus, and Treg all fell to the void grenade Bodega had hidden in a molar tooth and spat into the middle of them, congealing their bodies instantly into one homogeneous lump. Finally, Plan D, deal with Blatchman. No doubt he'd got something disgusting up his sleeve, that cape-wearing, jumpsuit-adorned pendejo shitbird. Bodega figured one thing he wasn't ready for was an old-fashioned punch in the kisser. Scram boots propelling him across the room, he connected with Blatchman's jaw with all the fury of a man invited to a birthday party only to be betrayed.
Wait, was the Grabby Grab still attached?
No, it just shoots out.
Okay.
And thirdly, the entire bar on its arse, one way or another, Bodega did the decent thing and left. Lasgun out, he seared a hole in the ceiling and jetpacked gracefully to a height of 200 meters before hovering, setting wide-angle beam on the lasgun and raising the entire place and everyone in it to the ground. Flarv, he said, pausing for a heartbeat. My tear cycle was parked there. The end.
Oh my god.
Shit, so he killed everyone, but he wrecked his bike.
Yeah, forgot about his bike.
Oh, that was a fantastic.
Shit. See, the grabby grab, I assumed that it was like attached to something.
his balls.
You don't want to be left there with a grabby grab.
No, but I
hanging
thought it was like one of those, you know, those like kid robot arm things with the trigger that like makes it pinch sort of thing,
I'm
but it was like
pretty sure-
attached to his pants or something.
I'm pretty sure that he could, if needed, fire it out with like a line attached. If he actually had to pull something to him.
Oh, right, and then the line just breaks off,
Yeah,
sort of thing.
but he can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Bodega. You know, he's got a million tricks up his sleeve. One of
That's
them is
true, yeah.
the deployable grabby that just clamps onto some guy's nuts.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah, there's 20 minutes at the start about dicks, and we solved Mike.
I mean,
we
that
solved
was-
the
that was-
we
micro-penis
solved
problem.
the
Solved it.
micropenis conundrum as well.
Also,
so.
wait, we haven't. There is something. Hang on a sec.
Oh,
Bodega Part Quatro.
Ah.
We have
shit.
Bodega Part Quattro. If you want,
Fuck.
we don't have to do it this week. It's up to you guys.
No, this is the best part
I
for
wait
me.
for this, yeah.
All right.
You know,
Enunciate. Right.
be,
Are you ready?
be careful.
Okay, enunciate
Yeah,
this
gentle.
time, okay?
I will.
Okay, good.
Bodega.
Can we have Ray Winston?
No,
Yeah,
my
okay.
voice won't take it.
Okay.
Bodega Part Quattro. No, we'll do it normally.
Oh, come on.
Bodega Part Quattro. Clouds of exhaust fumes, the stench of synth oil mixed with coolant, and the musky funk of 1,000 space dock engineers. Bodega choked back the aroma of the Barakian Quanto hub from high up on a gantry. His Gretham shuttle was parked on the roof. Its chameleon stealth field and some fancy flying had made it past the security screens. He rested one hand on his lasgun and the other on his groin, which was itching like hell. Damn Spalupian crotch crabs. 100 meters below.
Not the Spalupians.
Oh, they're the worst. The busy spaceport on the surface of Quanto 4 looked safe enough. Bodega had been scanning the crowds for an hour now, making sure there wasn't an ambush. That business with the smugglers had drawn some weird heat. Fedpol had been all over him like a case of crotch crabs. He wondered just how high up the remote-controlled vehicle smuggling ring went, but that wasn't his business. What was his business was the stench coming from the toilets on his ship. In orbit, cloaked naturally, its legendary ship, the Disco Volante, waited and, frankly, it reeked. He was pretty sure whatever was causing the noxious stank might even be leaking into space. However badly it ponged, it was still his ship. And at the push of a button on his wrist comp, it would decloak and rocket down to Bodega's position. At the push of another button, the ship would self-destruct, taking anything within 100 clicks with it. Bodega had to make sure he pushed the right button. He didn't know why he'd put the two buttons next to each other, but these things happen. What are you going to do?
Were they like a different color or anything?
With the spaceport surveillance complete,
Okay.
Bodega gave his crotch one more good scratch before he jetpacked down to the main floor. Since he wore no cape, the jetpack worked properly. If he'd been wearing a cape, Scrum knows what would have happened. Once down, he collared a Fedorian engineer and demanded a landing berth for his ship. He called the Disco Volante down from orbit by focusing hard and pressing the correct button. The Fedorians were a squat, ugly collection of what Bodega referred to as nerds. They knew everything there was to know about the inner workings of spaceships and computers and nerd shit like that. Loathsome as they were, Bodega had no choice. He'd studied grown-up things like how to tear a man's throat out and how to field strip a Vitarian squirm beam battle pack, so not useful when it came to fixing a busted mega toilet. The crapper needs some work. Got a stink coming off it, worse than, Bodega began to explain before the Fedorian interrupted. Its nasal voice cut through Bodega like a lasgun through a pack of nerds. Before we even get to the toilets, I really have to question your decision to have only one access door to this vessel. You really should have three. To not even have two is pretty terrible. This thing is already a death trap, and the controls are on the wrong side of the door. They should be on the right, and your gangplank is off angle by about 3 degrees. Bodega grimaced. Fucking nerds, he thought. They entered the ship. I don't smell anything wrong here, said the Fedorian. It stinks. The toilet. It's broken. Trust me, said Bodega. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. But okay, said the Fedorian, and he made for the toilets. As he entered the main deck of the Disco Volante, he recoiled in horror, pawing at the vid panels and peering into access shafts. Smell it now? Asked Bodega, grinning. No, it's your setup. My God, you have so many things wrong here. Why is your stealth field not firmware upgraded? Look at this wiring. It's like you don't even care. I have no idea why you would get a ship this expensive if you don't even know how to rig the squig indexer correctly. You must be losing like 1.5% more fuel every time you deorbit. The Fedorian was actually sniggering. He was standing there aboard the legendary Disco Volante and laughing at it. At Bodega. Bodega's face hardened. Are you shitting on my ship? He asked, giving the Fedorian one last chance to climb down from the precipice of a really bad time. The ship is a good one, but it's the owner. My Groggle, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing here, do you? This thing is suboptimal. It actually makes me want to put my head in my hands and maybe make a big post about it in the Fedorian engineering forums. The engineer prattled on, not noticing Bodega unholstering his famous las gun and aiming it squarely at the Fedorian's head. Pard, you just cost your planet a spaceport, said Bodega. As the Disco Volante sped into orbit, the Gretham following on autopilot behind, the explosions from the Barakian Quatro hub could be seen for miles around. Lasgun scorching, torpedo blasts, and even some dents from a fist would be found by investigators in the weeks to come. Bodega found the vault with the toilet anyway. He'd been drunk on bum pincher ale and had just forgotten to flush away a particularly unpleasant crap from the previous night. As his ship entered orbit, he flushed. The ship ejected the toxic poop, which tumbled back down to the planet's surface with a hearty plop. A final reminder for the people of this world, don't fuck with Bodega.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
I like the crap at the end.
I think, wow.
Man, that was a good one.
Okay. Do you want my storytelling adjunct
Go
to
for
the
it.
end?
Go
I think,
for it.
I think what you needed to do was grab the whatever is the Flav by the scruff of his neck, the nerd, sorry, by the scruff of his neck, and get his head down there, fucking get it in the toilet.
What did you say to Sips? What did you say to Sips last week?
What did I say to Sips?
He tried to correct me and say what you should have done, and you said you can't tell Pyrian what to do. He's an artist.
Oh shit! So anyway, do your Bodega. Let's fucking get in there. Let's enjoy it.
I don't feel like you're in the right frame of mind for Bodega.
Ben said about Bodega. He said, "The thing what I like about Bodega is that it's taking the piss out of all the shit science fiction.
Exactly.
But then it's become its own thing.
Yeah, who knew?
It's grown beyond it to the point where it's a little bit like pandas in World of Warcraft. Okay, it started off.
I knew World of Warcraft would fucking come up at some point. Jesus.
It started off being a joke, but now it's coming to a whole expansion.
Playing it at all recently.
And there's going to be like a Bodega book, and it's going to become a real thing.
But anyway, Bodega, part Cinco.
Oh my God.
This is very different from other bodegas, this one, okay?
Okay, I mean, in a bad way?
You'll see.
All right.
Scratching the itchy collar of his dull grey uniform, Ensign Crunkett waited impatiently outside Commander Tortola's quarters. He'd made an appointment to see Tortola 3 days ago. How the scriv can the boss man be so busy? They'd been sat in this asteroid belt on silent running for 3 months with no orders that he knew of. What a waste of time. 3 months jammed into every crevice of this fast patrol ship, except for the areas that were mysteriously off limits. That meant no trips to engineering to hang out with his buddy Looper. Definitely no trips to the cargo hold, which was normally a good vape spot. 3 months manning his listening post and hearing nothing. It was space. It was generally pretty flaving quiet. Startling Crunkett, the intercom to Tortola's room barked, "Enter!" and the door hissed open. Crunkett stooped to enter the commander's quarters. They were cramped, yet the designers had still found room to cram a desk in here along with a bed, a bathroom and a lounge, all in dull official grey. That was the colour of most things around here, official grey. Tortola was sat in his grey uniform and his grey chair behind the grey desk, staring at his computer screen. He made a condescending hand gesture to Crunkett to begin talking. Crunkett cleared his throat. "Sir, it's been 3 months. I was due some R&R 2 weeks ago, but because we're stuck here, I missed the birth of my daughter, and I'm thinking..." Tortola cut him off with a glance. He read from the screen. "Crunkett, Ensign Crunkett, 2 years service on the force, and here you are marching into my quarters to demand leave. We're on a mission. You don't need to know what that mission is, Ensign, but by Groggle, we're on it. You signed over your right to a holiday when you took the oath and put on a badge," said Tortola. A rehearsed dressing down was on its way, Crunkett guessed. Tortola stood up sharply in an attempt to look authoritative, but banged his head on the low ceiling. Pretending this hadn't happened, he continued, lecturing Crunkett about duty and the importance of the morality police division out here in the void of space, how beings could lose their sense of direction and decency, and needed to know that out here in the blackness there was still an organization dedicated to rooting out wrong and bringing justice to the unjust. Just because space is cold and uncaring doesn't mean we have to be. Sir, I've worked law enforcement before. I've done stakeouts before. This feels like a stakeout, but we're staking out an asteroid belt in the arse end of nowhere. Nobody comes here because these rocks are empty. There are no habitable planets. There is no traffic. There's nothing. If I'd known this was going to be the mission, I never would have signed up for it, pleaded Crunkett. I thought we were going to be back in time for my wife's due date. This is the SS Expectation, Ensign, said Tortola, gesturing around him. We're not your usual police cruiser. There's a reason we didn't tell any of you what your mission was. You're getting paid time and a half, so you're being compensated appropriately. I'm not going to ask you to trust me, because this is not about trust. This is about duty. Do your job. Get out of my office, said Tortola coldly. Crunkett left. He wasn't angry. The working man always got screwed over like this. He was resigned to it. He just wanted to make sure his daughter had better. Crunkett was in the middle of wondering what he was going to do when the red lighting pulsing in the floor and at every comm station told him that the silent alarm had been tripped. He ran to his post, jostling with other members of the crew doing the same. Part of him was nervous. Another part thought, thank Flav, something to do. Tortola was on the bridge in a heartbeat after everyone else. He addressed the crew. Okay, people, it's time to come clean. We've just detected the vessel we were sent to find. We're just one of hundreds of ships just like ours undertaking the same mission all over the galaxy. For 3 months, we've been laying in wait like Tridorian trap crabs. And now, finally, we've detected the ship. It's docking at a hidden base on an asteroid in the Borkaba belt, just a few 100,000 clicks ahead of us. It is vital that we maintain silent running. Ensign Crunkett, go to work. Crunkett slid into his seat and rummaged for his headset. The chatter on the bridge was reaching fever pitch. Everybody was thinking the same thing. Holy shit, something's actually happening. Something's happening. But what? The listening post was incredibly high-tech. He used an almost undetectable array of ultra-fine beams of varying compositions to scan a huge area of space and detect micro-distortions caused by sound waves. In space, of course, there was no sound, but the beam array carried enough different types and layers that even the most well-shielded surface could be probed, and you could listen in to anything pressurized, even a space helmet. And once something was detected, the array could narrow down to that point and listen into anything. The sound of weapons being charged, an ultra-quiet engine, even a conversation, or what Crunkett heard, a man whistling a jaunty tune. He recognized the tune. It was Ode to the Lasgun, a famous war song from Shrovia, the planet of war. Shrovians? Out here in deep space? They normally stuck to their factories and boardrooms, coming up with new and terrible weaponry. Then he heard talking, someone recording a personal log. And when he heard the voice, his blood froze in his veins and he felt tears welling in his eyes. This was the dread fear that consumed all hope in a man. Sir, he mumbled. Crunkett, speak, man. Sir, I think it's Bodega. Tortola stood slowly, steeling himself. Ensign Zither, send the whisper, said Tortola, and the tiny scout vessel of the MPD fired a single subspace particle from its comms array. That single particle would be lost in the background noise of the universe to anyone listening. Impossible to decrypt, impossible to detect. Bodega could not know that the MPD vessel Expectation just sent a 1-bit signal that MPD HQ would instantly know meant one thing. Operation Kill Bodega was on.
Oh, amazing. So, okay, couple of things. First of all, I like how it's good shit sci-fi because it's the same shit we're familiar with, yet massively far in the future. It's right. You got an ensign and a grumpy guy and like a military boardroom and all that shit and vaping in like a, and do you know what I mean? It's like Ensign Crunkett is totally the Mary Sue of Pyrian Flax. You are. If you put yourself into this universe, you would be.
I wouldn't be Ensign Crunkett.
You're totally Ensign Crunkett. There's so much Mary Sueing going on.
I'm Bodega. Come on.
No, you're not. You're Ensign Crunkett with the hard done by guy who's like pretty low rank. He's like a bit sick of it. He's had to miss his story.
I wouldn't even be in the police, man. I wouldn't sign up with the Popo. Come on.
100% that. And I like this because by the time something gets to like part 5, right, it's got a bit bad, right? and they start doing things like introducing new characters. No, because everyone says, I just wanna have a bodega adventure, but the author's like, oh, I'm a bit sick of writing bodega adventures. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add some new characters. So he adds Ensign Crunkett, and he adds this new guy, and everyone's like, oh, well, it's not the bodega I remember, but at least it's not a bodega.
Bodega wasn't even in this episode, really.
Yeah, and that's what that's what starts happening when they start getting to like these, later stage sequels and stuff.
As a counterpoint, Flax, I thought it was fucking great.
Like a big furry ball sack.
Like two big hairy testicles, one of which has teeth.
Like gremlins before they become like the gross ones.
Right.
Like the little,
but huge
Furbies.
and furious.
Little Furbies, yeah. A huge, furious Furby.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
If you can hook me up with all that, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Then I can. Yeah. All right. Let's see if Bodega Part 6.
Seis.
Part 6.
Seis.
Are you ready?
Drum roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bodega.
Fucking born ready.
Part 6. Huffing and puffing like an old-timey steam engine, Benny the orderly wheeled Bodega out onto the veranda overlooking the grounds of the prison on Pentar 9. He set the brake on the wheelchair and leant against the railings, catching his breath. Pushing this thing around was hell on his back. Phew! Okay, old-timer, here we are. Now, what are we looking for, said Benny. Bodega wheezed alongside Benny. There's a star I'm looking for, croaked the ancient convict. A star for your 300th birthday, huh? Said Benny, kneeling beside him and peering up. He glanced at Bodega, whose face was knotted with concentration. Can't see nothing, he said finally, before turning his head slowly to Benny. His eyes still had that Bodega sparkle, but he also smelled badly of urine, so it balanced out.
I love this so much already.
Let's head on down, old-timer. They'll be bringing out your cake soon, said Benny, as he stood and began fiddling with the brake lever on the chair. As the wheels pivoted to take them back to the elevator, Bodega took one last glance at the constellations above. There, a bright blue star, brighter than a lasgun beam. It had no place where it was, right in that area of space known as the Dark Rift, a vast area totally devoid of matter. Some said there'd been once thousands of stars and hundreds of worlds in that gap before some insane and ancient mega-war had emptied the corner of the galaxy. And now there was a star. Bodega turned to Benny. Benny, that star there, you see it? Benny looked. Yeah, I see it, man, I see it. You know what that star means? Said Bodega, smiling. Why don't you tell me, Pard? It means something, said Bodega, looking lost in the thick fog of age. Downstairs at the party, Benny left Bodega at one end of a long table while he went to get the cake. There were no guests. There was a single paper plate and a plastic fork, a napkin, a plastic cup of water. Bodega was held into the wheelchair with metal restraints at his wrists, elbows, knees, ankles, neck, and around his waist. Benny would have to feed him the cake. Benny was great. Benny was a real star. Real star, said Bodega. Then he froze. He looked at the plate, at his hands, at the fork. Then he closed his eyes. Benny re-entered the room, just in time for it to explode into a million bright white shards of light, along with Benny. Bodega was lying in what looked like a stasis pod. He was restrained in reality, just like he was in that illusory sim world he'd been stuck in. For how long? How long had he been under? He was as naked as a Quadian, a people known for being naked, and not just naked, but really in your face, think nothing of it, bending down to pick up a penny and giving you an eyeful naked. He focused hard on that corner of his brain where the implant was, the minute implant that had maybe saved his life. That implant was inserted into his brain a decade ago by his then girlfriend, Majesta. She was a psychic being of nearly limitless power who'd looked into his soul one day and decided that actually it wasn't her, it was him, and they should break up. She took his dog, convincing it telepathically that she would be the better owner. That was the real heartbreaker, thought Bodega.
Oh my god.
What a bitch.
Anyway, the implant was her idea. He remembered her words. Bodega, my love, I've given you a part of my power. I've hidden it in your mind, buried deep in the corner you never use. Just next to your pity and your mercy, you'll find me. If you're ever lost in the darkness, if your mind is not your own, look for me, your bright blue star in the void. That implant did more than send him a signal. It was also one of the most perfect prison escape packages ever devised. It was the high-tech equivalent of the old file hidden in a cake trick. He needed to crush the implant with his actual brain. He had to use every muscle and sinew in his brain to crush the implant and release its power. Come on, you fucker, pop, thought Bodega. And with titanic effort, pop it did. He saw stars. Then he saw waves of energy all around him, knowing their composition and their purpose, their origin and their future all at once. While the effects of the implant were in full force, he was at one with the universe. He could shape matter, move through it, bend it to his will. He melded right up out of the pod, hanging in the air like some deity, and orderly working the night shift dropped his cup of synth tea and ran out of the room screaming. Bodega didn't have long before the effects of the implant wore off. He could sense his ship about 200 meters below him, and he pivoted in the air and dived straight down, through the decks of the station. He realized he was now on. He could sense all the panic. He could see the past and future of every particle and every living person nearby, and he could feel their emotions and their thoughts. It was overwhelming. He focused on the one thing he needed, the Disco Volante. In a moment, he was there, floating in its lounge area. He rematerialized and quickly put on a spare spacesuit. Firing up the engines, he focused one more time and deleted the cargo bay doors from existence. The ship was blown out into space, along with dozens of dock workers. He fired up the engines and plotted a course for somewhere far away, and slammed the hyperspace button with his palm. The Disco Volante hung motionless for a moment, before it became a single streak of light, pointing straight into the void. The end.
Wow.
Oh,
Part
Bodega.
Bodega.
God, that was a glorious Bodega.
That was a really good one.
Thank you. So we missed out. Like I leave all these gaps because I can go back and fill them in later, and also because people like to write all this fans fiction and stuff. So I want to leave all these gaps, like the trial of Bodega. That has to happen now. What happened at the trial of Bodega? Yeah. How did he end up on Prison Planet? I mean, we know that there was that operation in the last one to capture him, but why didn't they
filling in the blanks is fun though.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You can do. You can do like the what they're doing with Star Wars, like
exactly.
with the new movie. You can just have like little side
It's just
stories.
like Star Wars. It's just
Bodega stories.